More rumored targets for the Detroit Pistons this offseason have been spotted online. Naz Reid, Miles Turner, even Trey Murphy from the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk about all these names and more right here on Top Title Detroit. Let's get into it. Perfect. What's good? Welcome to Top Title Detroit. I am Eric Vincent, your host and Detroit Pistons beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Make sure you lock in with us, like the video, and please subscribe to the channel. We creeping up to 300 subscribers, and I would love to tag that before the end of the month. I would really appreciate your support. Tell a friend to lock in with us here on Top Title Detroit. I would really appreciate that, y'all. And we got to talk about some more offseason news. Again, it's going to be a long summer of rumors coming in for the Pistons. And before we even get to the names, let's just be thankful and happy that the Pistons are now graduating to some names that could really tip a lot of their competitive edge in the Eastern Conference. You're finally past the Marvin Bagleys and the James Wisemans and the reclamation projects. Now you're stepping into a new territory. According to Mark Stein on Twitter, there's a report that the Pistons could be interested in adding a stretch big this offseason. Two names that were listed that the Pistons could be linked and interested in this coming offseason were Naz Reid, coming from the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Miles Turner, center from the Indiana Pacers, currently playing in the NBA Finals, about to start up this week. And I was pretty shocked to hear that. Another name that kind of fell through as well, we're going to get to his name in a little bit. According to Bovada Official, one of the sporting books online, there was a link that the Pistons are one of the betting favorites, fourth best odds as of right now for this offseason to add Trey Murphy to their roster. Swingman from the New Orleans Pelicans, highly talented player. And again, just very shocking to hear him and the other names that are attached to him. So let's talk about the likeliness of this really being something that could happen, or if this is just smoke that's kind of just going through the wind right now. Again, looking at the Pistons roster, adding a stretch big is not a bad idea. I think that could be something beneficial to them. I like their five. I like their core. You know, the foundation that they've laid aside with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey when he returns from injury, Asar Thompson. You still have Tobias Harris on one more year on his contract, and Jalen Duren, who kind of really took a step forward in the second half of the season. Now, I like Tobias Harris, but I wouldn't mind seeing the Pistons targeting somebody that could be their stretch forward of the future. Tobias is about, I think, 34 years old at this point. I think entering his 13th to 14th season. So he's only got so much more time left in his career. The Pistons should be looking for somebody that's a little bit more in line with their timeline and someone that can help them for winning, I guess, even right now and in the future as well. So when you look at a name like Naz Reid, you can't help be interested. Naz Reid is a fantastic basketball player. He's 25 years old, really just entering the prime of his career. He has a $15 million player option on his contract, which is likely that he will deny, and he will test out the free agency market to see what's out there for him. Naz Reid has been a relative, I don't want to say a role player, but he's been a reserve coming off the bench for the Timberwolves, filling in for Julius Randle when he goes to the bench. And Naz Reid has played in some stretches as a starter and as a focal point player for the Timberwolves as well. Knowing what his production has been as a physical, four and a backup five, a guy that can create his own shot, a guy that's very capable of shooting from the perimeter, very capable of defending 1 through 5. He's very agile, very quick with his feet, very physical, and embodies a lot of the characteristics that are found and defined in the Pistons' identity as a team now under J.B. Bickerstaff. I think this will be a fantastic addition for the Pistons. Now, it's not going to be easy. I feel like Naz Reid is going to be one of the most popular names sought after in the offseason by a lot of different teams that could be looking for a player of his services. And knowing that he's turning down $15 million, where he's also said he wouldn't mind keeping the idea open of possibly going back to Minnesota, especially knowing what they built up together going to the Western Conference Finals, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years in a row. And basically, again, being one of their most important players, especially in areas where Julius Randle has been injured or Rudy Gobert hasn't been playing up to snuff. Naz Reid has been a very good filler in that front court for Minnesota, helping out guys like Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and the talent that they have on that roster in the Western Conference. Naz Reid could be one of those players that tip a lot of things in whatever team he decides to go into for their direction. Again, I don't think he's just a reserve. I don't think he's just a bench player. I think he's somebody that you can play 25, 30 minutes a night and get some pretty sufficient production for them. He's not a guy that's going to just strictly be relied to do one or two things. He's going to be a guy that can kind of grow his game in a lot of different areas. Again, knowing that he's very versatile in terms of his offensive production, that he can guard and defend and be locked in on that end of the basketball court, that makes him very attractive as an option and a piece for the Detroit Pistons. Again, he fits their timeline at 25 years old, and if he's able to mend the issues or whatever we saw from that little scuffle against the Pistons, later in the season with Ron Holland and Beef Stew and Marcus Sasser and Dante DiVincenzo, who was also involved. If everything is cool with that, I think this would be a slam dunk addition for this team. Again, this is a guy that really gives you a lot of threat in that front court offensively that they don't currently have. Again, you got out of Tobias Harris, but for the most part, he's really the only guy in the starting front court that can create his own shot on a consistent basis and be a true threat as well. Asar Thompson is a threat as a passer and a slasher, but in terms of creating his own shot, that's not really his game and where he excels. Same thing with Jalen Duren. I mean, they're guys that can put up points, but you don't really just throw them the rock to go create their own looks. Like, that's just not what they do. They get set up from Cade. They get set up from Jaden Ivey. Like, Asar does a lot of cutting from the baseline and off ball to get his own open looks from there. And those are beneficial. Knowing the Pistons, however, though, we've seen Cade Cunningham get double teamed a lot. Not even just in the postseason, but really through his entire career since he's been drafted by the Pistons. And Trajan Langdon has to be thinking, we have to find a way to get more attention taken away from Cade. Now, granted, he is a superstar talented player, so he's always going to have extra attention. But you have to be able to find guys that can take advantage of that. So when they do send doubles at him, you have someone who can knock down an open three or slash for an easy dunk like Jaden Ivey was really good at this season. You need to be able to find those kind of guys that can capitalize on those kind of situations. And I think Naz Reid could be one of those guys. Again, knowing he also kind of fits in with their culture of defense and physical basketball, he can be one of those guys that, keeps the Pistons one of the better rebounding teams in the NBA and helps them create opportunities to go play quickly in transition because he can show the ability of being a defensive playmaker and cleaning up missed shots and rebounds instead of allowing the opponents to clean up offensive glass looks and give them second chance opportunities. Naz Reid is one of those guys that can fill in for Tobias Harris, who was a really good rebounder this past season. I think Naz Reid will be a really good addition to kind of step in and help out with that if he decides to take the money and if the Pistons have the money available to go after somebody like him. Looking at what their roster sits on right now, they have Tim Hardaway Jr. going into free agency, Malik Beasley going into free agency, Dennis Schroeder going into free agency. You have Paul Reed going into free agency, and you also have the possible extensions for Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren that you could possibly extend to them if Trajan Langdon decides to do so. So knowing that all of those priorities are at the back of his mind or at the front of his mind at this moment, it's not going to be the easiest pitch to send to somebody like Naz Reid. They might not have as much money as some other teams in the offseason, They have cap space. I think after Cade Cunningham's NBA All-NBA bonus that he got, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're down to around $19 million in cap space this offseason. So that makes it a little bit tighter from what they had prior to that. And, it's not going to be easy, but knowing the Pistons' window of being a winning team and knowing that there's other teams in the Eastern Conference that are looking to get stronger, the Pistons, I don't think necessarily should be trying to just run it back with what they had. So you should be putting a pretty creative way or package together to look at a guy like Naz Reid. And again, just the fact that rumor is out there, knowing a guy like Mark Stein who reports these kind of things often, and he's one of the more credible sources in NBA media, it shows the Pistons could be serious. We also saw that Toronto's looking to add a piece. We also saw that Orlando's looking to add some pieces. The Pistons can't get lost in the shuffle just waiting for their young guys to get better and letting all these free agents and all these other targets go boost up these other teams who are trying to catch up to them. You cannot get lost in that shuffle, especially when there's a window open as a team like the Boston Celtics are dealing with injuries and may not be the same team that we saw with some teams or some players that they could be getting rid of as soon as this offseason as well to kind of make their cap work out. So there is a window for the Pistons, and I think a guy like Naz Reid will be a perfect addition if they have the perfect resources to go ahead and make that move. Another name, like we just said, Miles Turner. This is probably the most confusing of the three names because I just don't understand where his fit would be with this team. Now, ironically, he is also somebody that had a little bit of tempers flaring with the Pistons this season, knowing the rivalry and the energy that was created between the Pistons and the Pacers over the last 3 games this season, even the first game where they're talking a little trash when Jaden Ivey was playing. I just don't see how Miles Turner really fits in this equation. If you have Jalen Duren, and if they're interested in keeping him for the future, which I think is very possible, assuming that he still keeps, ascending in the proper direction. If he is offered that, extension or is at least told, hey, we want to keep you here for the foreseeable future, I don't really understand where Miles Turner comes in that equation. They're two completely separate players. Like, Duren's a guy that's a lob threat for Cade Cunningham, a really good pick and roll option. He's expanded his game a little bit by driving and isolating a little bit more. We saw him passing and playmaking a lot more as well, which was a benefit for the team. But in terms of how he plays compared to a Miles Turner, they're not really the same guys. I think Turner's a better rim protector. He's obviously a much better three-point shooter. He's just a little bit of a different player. Doesn't have the same kind of foul trouble issues as Jalen Duren. They're just not the same. Obviously, more experience as well. And looking at Miles Turner, who turns 30, if I'm not mistaken, this year, next year, he's in a position now where he's looking to get paid. And we normally see athletes in whatever sport it is, when they get to a championship or win a championship, they want to capitalize on that moment by cashing out in free agency when they get that opportunity. So I can see that being a big priority for Miles Turner coming into this offseason. Again, I don't know him personally, so I don't really know. I'm not reporting on what he is looking for or not looking for. I'm just following the trends from what we've seen through the NBA, NFL, and other experiences like that. So it's very possible he could want to go back to the Pacers, especially if they win a ring. If you got something good there, why would you want to shake that up? I totally would understand that. The Pistons, to me, I just don't think are the most suitable position for him. You have Beef Stew, who's still on contract. And, from all that we've known from the team, the players, the coaching staff, they've called Beef Stew basically the heart and soul of this team. And I can't see them getting rid or letting him go for a guy like Miles Turner to fill in that void. Would it be possibly an upgrade at the position? Sure. But I feel like they have a lot of regard for Beef Stew and his future with this team. Again, I'm not sure what the direction is going to be. It could be a surprise. We did see Trajan Langdon speak a little bit during his, goodbye session they had with the media after the playoffs were over, where he was talking about how much he admired the camaraderie of the locker room and the energy with the team. But he also said, hey, these guys could get other offers from somebody else. So it basically said, like, we appreciate what was last season, but we're not going to shut the door on other opportunities to keep this team to get better. He said that's the number one priority over everything. So knowing that, I do think it's possible that we could see some things shake up. In what direction, how drastic, we're not sure. He did say he wanted to be patient. He said he wanted to see what he had with the young core. I still think that's their number one priority with this team. But you do have to, basically complement them with the right pieces that are going to take them to that next level. Beasley, Tobias, and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Paul Reed did a fantastic job. Dennis Schroeder as well, in complimenting the young guys and helping put them in positions to win and thrive and grow with their games. But at this point, it would be a mistake, again, to kind of roll back the exact same names, roll back with the same names, the same team, and just say, hey, well, because we're healthy now, because we got a year under our belt, everything is going to go in our direction. Not necessarily, because teams are now scouting for you. Everybody gets a little bit older. Other teams are getting better and improving their roster. You can't just bank on the cohesiveness and experience of just the same exact roster to be better again, especially when you're not a championship team. Championship teams do that, and regularly it don't even work for the championship teams. They find ways to update their rosters as well. So the Pistons should be looking to do that. I'm just not certain that Miles Turner would be the guy to make that happen. So I'm not really putting a whole lot of stock into his name. I think he'll find himself a big deal. I just don't think it's going to be with the Pistons. And the final name we're going to get to here is Trey Murphy. One of my favorite players that I would like talking about this offseason, man. Again, I wasn't super hip with the Pelicans. I didn't watch a whole lot of New Orleans basketball this season. But, man, every time I got a chance to see this guy online or something I saw on TV on League Pass, he was blowing my mind with the way he was making plays for the Pelicans. Trey Murphy is an absolute superstar talent. Superstar talent. I'm not saying he is, the next MVP or anything of the sort, but I think the way he plays is truly sensational. Super athletic, can shoot the three ball from the parking lot. Very, very, impressive leaps to dunk on, his opponents. Really a long wingspan. And really looks like one of those players that could really do some damage in a better situation compared to where he is now with the Pelicans, where things are really sinking south more so than they are going forward for them. And again, according to Bravada, it looks like they could be the Pistons that could be on their radar. Apparently, according to the tweet, it says that the Nuggets were the most likely team with odds of plus 500, then the Pacers at plus 700, the Spurs plus 700, and then the Pistons 750. After that, it's the Clippers, Lakers, of course, all the big market teams. Clippers, Lakers, Miami, the Raptors, the Celtics, I can't see, and then the Mavericks. Some pretty interesting names, and pretty interesting to see the Pistons among those names in discussion. Again, you've graduated from everyone just being a reclamation project for the names that you add to these kind of moments. Now that you have these kind of players on your radar, you need to be taking that pretty serious, because these guys like Trey Murphy, in comparison to guys like Derek White, who we talked about in the last video, these are the players you break down your foundation for. Trey Murphy is an absolute dog. You build for guys like him, and you break down your foundation for guys like him because he has a star talent in front of him and room to keep growing. We've already seen him be sensational. I think he averaged, 21 points a game last season, and he has the talent to take that up another notch. He is a fantastic basketball player, and in the right situation, I can see that thriving in his NBA career. Like, I don't know. I just feel like the Pistons could use a guy like him. He's another creator. He's another, ball handler, very, very athletic, very sound understanding of the basketball game from both sides of the floor, offense and defense. I just really like from what I see from him. He's very impressive from what I've gathered in his career thus far. And again, knowing that he has the ability to keep blossoming him in his career at this point, that to me is going to make him more sought after than guys like Derek White or even Miles Turner, who possibly could have capped out at these points in their career already. I don't know. I feel like this guy is going to be something sensational, man. Again, I don't know if the Pistons are going to be the team to add him in, because again, if Trajan Langdon is high on the Pistons foundation the way he keeps telling us he is, it would shock me to see him break that down for a guy like Trey Murphy, because adding him in is going to be very expensive. Probably going to cost you a couple players, probably going to cost you a couple picks, and you're not going to probably get a whole lot of compensation back. Even though Trajan Langdon has connections back with the New Orleans Pelicans office, I don't see them doing him any kind of favors based on where he is now with the Pistons. I just can't see that. I can't see them finding a way to finesse a player like Trey Murphy away from them, knowing that he's their biggest bargaining chip, definitely more so than Zion Williamson at this point. So they're going to want to cash out big to make sure their rebuild is going in the proper direction, based on whatever they get back in return for Trey Murphy. So there are going to be some teams that are in position to, make some big gambles to probably offer to get them over there. I think Denver would be a super perfect team if you could find a way to get him next to Jamal Murray and Jokic as their number 2 or number 3 guy, replace him with Michael Porter Jr. Oh my goodness, that would be such a perfect fit. I would love to see that for Denver. And I would love to see it for the Pistons too. And again, it depends on what the rate would be and how much it would cost. But just based on the play style and the trajectory of the player, these are the kind of guys that you should be high on in terms of bringing in for your team. Again, the Piston players that I think they need to be bringing in are stretch bigs. If you can find a way to get a guy like Naz Reid, if you can find a way to maybe talk to Houston about Jabari Smith Jr., maybe they're not happy with how things are going with him. Maybe that's a guy you can find a way to pry in. Like, I don't like the idea of the Pistons just bringing in a guy that's a stretch four just for the a short, tiny window in the expense of your future. I just don't like the idea of that, because getting rid of a guy like Jaden Ivey, who could be here for 5 to 10 years as a suitable piece next to Cade Cunningham, you don't want to give up on that for a guy that could be here for just 2 years, and then you got to reload to find somebody else to fill in with him after that. We saw that happen with the Pistons in 2004 when Ben Wallace was let go. They tried to fill in with the old Rasheed Wallace, with Antonio McDyess, with Nazir Muhammad, old Chris Webber. Like, they just tried to keep filling in names and names and names to get bidded, because the rest of their future was gone after he signed to leave and go with Chicago and then Cleveland and whoever else he played for. You got to make sure your future is solidified. You have one of the youngest foundations in basketball right now. And if you choose to blow it up, you want to do it for the right piece, not just any piece. You hear a lot of talking heads and a lot of media members and a lot of names saying, oh, the Pistons have to do something big. They have to make a big splash now to make sure they stay up with the league. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Knowing that you've seen the proper trajectory with Cade Cunningham, with Jaden Ivey, with Asar Thompson, with Beef Stew, Jalen Duren, you've seen the young guys take a step forward. And knowing that they were able to do that with guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, and Tobias Harris as their main complementary pieces, show that you don't have to rush out for a guy like Devin Booker to make sure the young core is safe. Because even if you do that, the young core is probably not going to be safe. The young core will probably be gone, because those kind of players to acquire are going to be very expensive to bring in for the Detroit Pistons. So that's something to keep in mind here. Again, I understand the desire to see the roster shake up and build up something and add in some, youthful and helpful pieces. What the cost is going to be is the main conversation. Trajan Langdon is going to be thinking about that. He doesn't want to dive too deep, and I understand that. But it will be all eyes on him to see what he's able to do with this offseason. Will they be able to add a stretch big? Will they find another dynamic scorer to go next to Cade and Ivey? We'll see what they do. But talk to me in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. Of these three names, do any of these guys interest you as a new addition for the Detroit Pistons? Would you like to see Naz Reid here? Would you like to see Miles Turner here? Would you like to see Trey Murphy here? Who would you like to see added to this Pistons team in the offseason? Talk to me in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Again, make sure you like the video, spread it around, share it around, and talk to me about what you think the Pistons offseason plan should be. I got an article coming up on it on clutchpoints.com as well. Make sure you tap in with me there. I would really appreciate that support as well. Again, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. We get closer and closer to 300 subscribers. I would really appreciate the love. You can also lock in with me on my social media at I am Eric Vincent. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you for being here. I'll see you again soon, right here on Top Title Detroit. Peace.